You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Welcome back to the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast presented by Zeno Pucks. It's Brian here with Andrew, and boy, do we have a lot of stuff to go over because we're gluttons for punishment, and instead of doing two separate shows, we decided to cram all this shit into one. So here we go, Andrew.
Woo.
Let's get started right away because there's a lot we have to get to, and ultimately there's some stuff that did not make the cut for the show because I didn't want to be here for 3 or 4 hours doing this. Yep. So first thing I want to get to is real quick, start of the new season now. You know, we're past July 1st, but at the draft, we saw the debut of the new Fanatics jerseys. The on-ice product, as they mentioned in the past, was pretty much going to be unchanged. You can see the quality of the material on the players' jerseys looks like it's good. So the big design change, of course, is going from the much beloved perforated shoulders that the Adidas jerseys had to just regular fabric now, which I'm indifferent on. I mean, they were that way forever. The Adidas ones just were kind of unique in that sense. So I will miss it, but I'm not. It's not too big of a loss.
Yeah, I think honestly, the on-ice product, I think it looks good. I know everybody was kind of skeptical when we all found out that Fanatics was going to be taking over the jerseys, especially when you given the fiasco that happened with Major League Baseball, but that turned out to be the fault of Nike.
Yeah, surprise.
So overall, though, I like it. Like you say, I mean, it's virtually unchanged, minus the spongy shoulders. But the players seem to be happy with it. I think they still look good. So, and they're going to offer different tiers of those jerseys to the fans, including the official on-ice jersey that the players wear as well. So if you're in the mood to spend $400 on a jersey, you will have that option.
Yep, which I think is pretty cool. I will be probably myself going with the tier like this where they had, I think these were called Climalite or Prime Green. They switched names at one point, but the fan authentic you could get was either Prime Green or Climalite jerseys for the longest time. The players' jerseys were Adi Zero jerseys. So yeah. The stitching was a little different, I guess, in the arms and in the waist or whatever. But I'll probably stick with whatever the middle tier is because I don't need an on-ice jersey because I'm not the one that's playing. So
likewise.
But yeah, now two teams debuted all new looks with the new Fanatics jerseys, the Anaheim Ducks and the LA Kings, both going back to their roots and kind of going with that 90s look that they both rocked. The Kings, of course, using the word print that says Los Angeles Kings, a big nod to the Gretzky era with the black and, I guess, silver, you could call it, coloring. And the Ducks, of course, going with the iconic Mighty Ducks logo with some slight changes to it, but the Ducks went full force with the orange on these. Pretty much everything except the away jersey is completely oranged out. So pretty cool look for both teams. I thought the Kings are really, really clean. And of course the Ducks, I think the pants should have been black for the Ducks, but overall the uniforms are gorgeous.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. And I mean, I've never been a huge fan of the LA Kings branding as in general. Just I think the color schemes is boring, but I really do like this kind of nod, like you said, to the Gretzky era. I think it's really cool. It's a nice little throwback. I think it looks really good. The Anaheim Ducks, man, those unis are disgusting, and I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah,
they look so good. I mean, they're vibrant. The Mighty Ducks logo is sick. I like the red eyes on it. I think they just really hit it out of the park with this one. So those are going to look good on the ice this year.
I think the red eyes is one of the only things I don't like, but overall the design's good. It looks a lot more modern, but generally speaking, they did a really good job. And just the fact that they brought back the Mighty Ducks logo feels right. The webbed foot was really kind of boring, kind of tacky. Holy hell, it is like a hurricane outside of my house. It is pouring so hard outside. I could hear it through my headphones, which normally I can't hear anything because these are noise canceling.
Oh, it's sunny and 86 here. So, well, sorry, 84. I stand corrected.
Well, yeah, it is not that here. It is pouring rain and thundering. So, anywho, well, let's move on here because between yesterday and today, over 100 contracts and extensions have been signed. We, of course, cannot possibly do all of these in one show. So I picked out still what's a pretty sizable chunk here, and we're going to try and chip away at this here. And I got a few marked for significance that we're going to get to first, and then we'll come back down the list and hit whatever else we didn't beforehand. So let's get to those. First thing first, 3 contracts were bought out, and I believe these are the biggest 3 to this point. Jeff Skinner was bought out by the Buffalo Sabres. Ryan Suter bought out by the Dallas Stars. Cam Atkinson bought out by the Flyers. I can't remember off the top of my head, and I've been kind of busy getting stuff done around the house today, so I didn't really keep super close track, but I believe those are the biggest buyouts to this point. Not surprising, really, any of them. Jeff Skinner really could use a start with a team that's going to make the playoffs. Ryan Suter is, I don't know. He's either going to sign somewhere for league minimum or he's retiring. It's got to be one of the two. He clearly lost a step this year. After last season, it was kind of like, okay, maybe there's still something in the tank. This season was just like, okay, this guy's really lost a step. And in the playoffs, it was absolutely obvious. The spotlight was right on him. I mean, he was one of 2 games going in the conference final, and yeah. It was bad. And then for Cam Atkinson, that relationship never worked out the way they were hoping for. I think when he came over from Columbus, I think they were hoping for, Blue Jackets level Cam Atkinson, and it just hasn't panned out.
It is what it is. I mean, there's not really anything you can do about it. I think it's the right move buying him out. See what happens with him elsewhere, if anything. Like you said for Suter, though, I think everybody knows it's the end of the line, and there's nothing wrong with that. I should point that out. And I mean, unless you're in complete denial, it's obvious. As you said, in the playoffs, it was obvious. It's just that this guy has lost a step. Nothing to be ashamed of. It happens. It's the end of the line. For Jeff Skinner, I think this is great, mutually great for both him and for the Buffalo Sabres, but mainly for him. That guy needs a change of scenery, man. That's really what it boils down to, and he needs to go to a contender. So, yeah, I mean,
I think his not making the playoff streak is finally coming to an end.
Yeah, which is good. That's what you want to see. But I'm not trying to turn this into a bash session for the Buffalo Sabres either. But I think anybody who has a chance at winning anything should just get the hell out of Buffalo. I think Buffalo is kind of just where careers go to die.
Well, I think they're actually going to be due for a big turnaround here. If UPL plays well in net for them next year, if they can get 2 years ago Tage Thompson to come back, I know he had kind of an off year this year, but between him, Dylan Cousins, if they can keep Power and Dahlin going, there's a lot of good pieces there for the Sabres. It's just a matter of execution. Even the best years of the Sabres in the last 10, which have been a nightmare for them. There have been moments where it felt like they were a playoff quality team and it just kind of fell apart on them. I think if they can keep it together, there's still hope there. But if I were a Sabres fan, my patience would be worn all the way through to this point. At this point, it's just let's play a fucking playoff game once.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not trying to rub this in again, but if there's one fan base that can absolutely relate to that, it's the Florida Panthers too. So, I mean, now look at where they are, obviously, but yeah, your patience runs thin after a while. And as a Sabres fan, which I'm thankfully not, I mean, you've got to be at your wit's end at this point.
Yeah, there's about 4 fan bases, I think, in the whole league where, you don't get punished for losing, where the fans will still show up in droves regardless. I think the biggest one people probably think of is Winnipeg. It seems like that arena sold out every night. But even this past season, as good as the team was, they weren't. But a lot of people said that's due to the economy or whatever. But very, very few teams can you have piss poor performances in the playoffs and continue to sell out the building. So you can see it at Sabres games. It's a very passionate fan base, but even still, they're really not filling out the arena as much. When visiting teams like Detroit, Chicago, Toronto come to town, they fill up the building with their fans. It's all the stuff we said of the Panthers 10 years ago, and all the stuff we said of the Coyotes their entire existence. It's you need to have some sort of a winning product because it's nearly impossible to fill a building when you never win.
Exactly. And like you said, very few and far between teams. Columbus, Minnesota, Toronto, Winnipeg, like that.
Montreal is another one.
Yeah.
Montreal, you see it. A bad night in Montreal is when they have 18 or 19,000 because the arena holds 22 or whatever. But
yeah,
so their bad nights are better than some teams' good nights. But still, again, very few fan bases where you can really get away with it. And it doesn't mean you should just because you can, Minnesota.
I mean, dude, I remember going to Panthers games with my wife where we'd go and there'd be 4,000 or 5,000 people there. I mean, that place was a ghost town. So I don't like it when other people are like, oh, these teams don't have real fans. No, unless you're one of the like 4 or 5 teams we mentioned, nobody's going to go pay to watch a losing team. That's just the way it is. So yeah, obviously the Panthers are filling out their arena. They just won the cup. They had a hell of a year. That arena should be full. So, but back to Buffalo. Yeah, it's time to turn it around and figure it out for the sake of your fans.
All right, so let's move on now and talk contracts. I didn't mean to go off on a Buffalo tangent, but boy, is it just easy to swing away at them. All right, so we'll start with the big fish. The Nashville Predators far and away had the best first day of free agency. They signed UC Saros to an extension, 8 years, $7.74 million per year. They pick up on the free agent market. They pick up Brady Shea, 7 years, $7 million per year. They get Steven Stamkos, 4 years, $8 million per year for him, and Marchessault, 5 years, $5.5 million per for him. So the Predators go out, they get 2 of the highest scoring guys in this free agent class. They fill in their top line, which will now look like Stamkos, Marchessault, and Forsberg, which is unfair. And then still have O'Reilly and Nyquist on the second line, who Nyquist had a good year last year. They bolster the defense with Brady Shea, who's a very good defender, and he's one of my favorite guys that's not on the Wild. He's a really good player. I think he's really good. And then, of course, you extend Saros, who made it very clear he wanted to stay in Nashville. I know there's issues with what's going to happen with Askarov now and in the minors for them, but just the NHL team alone in a vacuum, they look unbelievable now compared to last week.
Yeah, you think about it, they pretty much just added 94 goals a season to their roster. It's insane. They just bolstered that team. They loaded up, and they are going to be a dangerous team this year.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I just want to say, as far as the Stamkos contract, I think that's a great contract for him. $8 million a year, that's fucking great, especially given that he's 35.
We'll circle back to his contract in a second because Victor Hedman extended earlier today too, and yeah. But for the Predators, again, they had almost 100 goals to a team that had to change its tune halfway through or 3/4 of the way through the season. They had to be really focus on defense and shutting it down, and that's how they got into the playoffs. To have that mindset and then to bring in these great offensive weapons, you're addressing all your weaknesses without losing your strengths. We've talked about that before. You sometimes to address a weakness, you might lose a little bit of a strength. They didn't do that. They didn't lose any significant names other than Ryan McDonough. But again, you replace him with Brady Shea, the really good defender. So they take no true loss on defensive quality, and they add again almost 100 goals to their roster. So really, they did an excellent job. They keep their goalie locked up. It's good for the organization because it's showing faith in Saros, and it's good on Saros. He wanted to stay there and continue to build a winner. You can tell he really likes to play there. So props to the Predators, a fantastic day one of free agency. And I have to imagine with the losses in Colorado and Dallas that the Predators, you could argue, are one of the favorites to win the Central Division next year.
I don't disagree with you at all. Like I mentioned earlier, they are going to be an absolute unit this year. And I think anybody who has to play them, especially if they make the playoffs, should be very concerned. This is going to be a lethal team.
Yeah, so definitely winners of day one of free agency, and we'll see how the rest of the offseason goes, but it looks like they're going to do some damage. Speaking of winners, how about the team that won the Stanley Cup? The Florida Panthers re-signed Sam Reinhart, 8 years, $8.625 million a year. The Panthers lost quite a few key pieces to free agency, but I thought have done a good job to this point plugging in their depth roles. And again, the big thing for them was going to be keeping Sam Reinhart, and they've done exactly that at a super team-friendly price. Andrew, you can't really ask for much more as a fan.
No, I was ecstatic about it. I think the price was perfect. And now we got locked up. We have Sam Reinhart, Alexander Barkov, Matthew Tkachuk, and Gustav Forsling. Reinhart's locked in through 32, and the other guys are locked in through 30. So,
There's the core.
This team is
the same way Tampa Bay built their juggernaut. The Panthers are largely doing it the same way. Commit to your best players, and that's all you got to do.
Yeah, and I mean it does come with the price, though. I mean, we saw Montour and Lomberg walk, and same with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But I mean, those are guys that were key components of this team. But it's not going to make or break the team to see them go. It sucks as a fan because I mean, they're household names within the Panthers organization. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves Lamborghini. Just a different kind of energy he brings to the game. Montour, phenomenal offensive defenseman. It was a little lackluster towards the end of the season in the playoffs this year. But that just, it happens. Some guys slow down, some guys heat up at different times. But like you said, they lock down the core, and that's going to go a long way for this team. And I think, as a completely unbiased view here, the Panthers are going to be good for the next several years. Easy.
Yep. I like it. I like the move for them a ton. And like I said, I think, and again, they lose a guy like Stenlund, they lose Montour, they lose.
I forgot about Stenlund. That's right.
And so, again, guys that are key contributors, but they're not that Kevin Stenlund or Ryan Lomberg or these guys aren't effective, but you can find multiple role players like that in the league. You're not going to get the same exact guy every time, but you can fill a similar role with different depth players. Superstars are all unique in a lot of their own ways. They're just, each guy does something special. Like let's take a perfect example here. Let's plug in Sam Reinhart. Let's take him and replace him with a guy like Jason Robertson from Dallas. Jason Robertson is a super offensive, talented scorer. He's definitely one of Dallas's superstar players, but on the Panthers, that's a way different fit. You go from a guy like Reinhardt, who's an elite scorer, but he's also a really good defender and sees the game well, versus Robertson, who's more offensively gifted. I don't want to say he's a bad defender because I don't think he's a terrible defender, but he's most of his game is focused on offense. So his unique ability is to be an extreme scoring threat, and Reinhardt is too. But he's more than one of those key two-way players at the same time. So the Panthers have really, really focused on keeping this core together. And I have to imagine the next odd man out will be Aaron Ekblad next season.
Yeah, and that's going to be rough. I mean, he's been with the Panthers since day one. But like you said, you want these guys that are more complete players, like your Sam Reinhart, Alexander Barkov, who – and maybe I'll get dragged for this, maybe I won't. I think if you disagree with this, you're dumb. But Alexander Barkov, now that Bergeron's retired, is the best two-way forward.
Oh, he is. Right, I think I don't think. I mean, for a while Kopitar was too, but Kopitar's aged. I mean, he's not young anymore either. He's pretty sure he's the same age as Bergeron. He's just still playing. Yeah. So nothing wrong with that. I definitely think this was Barkov's role to take over. But again, good on the Panthers. And I want to go back and say that's not a dig on Jason Robertson for not being as good a two-way player. Right. But again, it's showing that every superstar player has their own unique abilities in the way they do things. And that's why that's important that you lock up those guys, because when their style works with your system, don't let them go. Like Absolutely. Tampa Bay did with the best player that's ever played for their team in history. But we'll get to that in a little while. So, boy, I really propped up the Panthers and then dunked on the Lightning in one segment. But
that's all right.
You know, that's okay. They kind of earned this one. The Carolina Hurricanes lock up a couple players too. Extension for Jacob Slavin, as we talked about on the last show. It is official. $6.43 million per year for the next 8 years for him. They also signed Shane Gostisbehere to a 3-year, $3.2 million a year deal. I think that's a good defensive depth signing. Look, they just lost Pesce, and this is not a direct replacement, but this is a guy that's going to be able to slide into the lineup and really help out. He's got experience now, and so I think that'll go a long way for them, especially in the playoffs when you need depth. The bigger signing for them as well out of the free agent class is Sean Walker. I actually lost the AAV in term for his contract, but he comes to Carolina. He brings a little bit of a higher skill level than Gostisbehere, a little bit more defensive prowess. So I like the move for them there. I thought he looked good in Colorado, but Colorado's so up against the cap, they can't even afford a t-shirt right now. So, and we'll get to them in a little while too. But I think Carolina, if it had Nashville not gone out and gotten everybody, you could definitely say that the Carolina Hurricanes had a really good day of free agency. I don't know that they're so much better than they were 2 days ago, but they're definitely not worse.
Yeah, I don't like you said, I don't know that they
haven't pushed the needle, but they didn't lose any ground. I think they're just as dangerous as they were before.
Correct. Yeah, they haven't lost anything. I guess that's the best way to put it. With that being said, they certainly haven't bolstered anything, but it's still Carolina Hurricanes. They still got Rod Brind'Amour. I think this is still a team that you shouldn't want to.
I don't want to play him. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they're still a good
not
team.
with Brendan Moore with his eyes wide open 24/7. No shot.
Yeah, man, that guy's always got the 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah. All right, next one here. This one I didn't think was super significant, but after Chicago started to add more pieces later on, I'm like, okay, you can see them being able to do some damage. The Hawks go out and they sign a forward Tyler Bertuzzi to a 4-year, $5.5 million per year contract. Bertuzzi has now played for 4 NHL teams, and all 4 of them are original 6 teams. The only 2 he has not played on are the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers now. Very cool deal for Bertuzzi. I mean, he wanted more money, so he couldn't stay in Toronto. He goes to Chicago, where, again, he's going to bring that physical brand of hockey. He's going to, I think, be a good role model for some of the younger kids. I especially like this signing for them because Bertuzzi spent a lot of his younger years in the minors. It really took him a long time to break into the league and before he became a super effective player. But I think a guy like that is perfect when you're developing a young roster, because not a lot of young players come into the league and they make the jump right to the NHL. And it's like, now what do I do? Bertuzzi can be a guy that's been all over the place. He's spent a lot of time in the minors. He learned a lot what it takes to be a pro in this league. And I think that's perfect for a super young team like the Blackhawks to bring in a guy like that.
Yeah, I think it's great to have a role model like that in your organization. And I don't want this to sound like I'm dogging on the Hawks by any means when I say this, but obviously Tyler Bertuzzi's number one priority is not winning right now. Now obviously he's looking to commit long-term with them. And like you said, he's great to have for those young players, given that he spent so much time in the minors, and you and I had seen him play in person when he was on Grand Rapids. But I do really think, I know I made jokes when they signed him, but in all seriousness, I think it's a great fit. I think it's a good move by the organization to get him in there for a Hawks team that's really looking to rebuild, essentially. I mean, build a team around Connor Bedard, essentially, is what they're doing at this point. So
yeah,
I think it's good you get that veteran presence in there, and he's got all that experience from the minors, and he knows what it takes to make it all the way to the top. So I think that's going to look good for Chicago going forward.
Oh, definitely. And I think, by the way, Hawks also bringing back Teuvo Teravainen on a 3-year deal too. They bring in Pat Maroon as well, and Alec Martinez. So they're bringing in guys now, not only veteran guys like they already brought in Nick Foligno last year. They bring in guys that have won championships. Now Teravainen won one with them in 2015. Martinez won famously with the LA Kings with the Stanley Cup winner that we've seen on every highlight reel in existence for the last 10 years. He also won with Vegas last year. Pat Maroon won with the Blues and then the Lightning twice. So you're bringing in championship caliber guys, and these guys might not be the best players in the league, but again, for an organization that stripped it down to the bones, like the Blackhawks did, to bring in these guys that just won a shitload is really going to pay dividends for these younger kids when they start to break into the playoffs in a couple of years.
Well, yeah, and like you said, yeah, they might not be the best players. A lot, Pat Maroon's no spring chicken, but it all comes down to experience, and these guys have it. The best experience you could possibly have. Like you said, they've all won, and that goes a long way in an organization that's starting fresh. Again, I think probably in the next few years, the Hawks are going to be good again. I really don't think that they're going to stay in this rut for too long.
No, and they have high expectations too as an original 6 franchise.
Absolutely. And Bedard was just the beginning of that. So now you got him, you build your team around him, you go from there. And I think this is the right move. So we'll see what happens. But I think that this group of guys is perfect for mentoring young prospects. So.
All right. And with the magic of video editing, we're back. So I want to talk about the New Jersey Devils. I mentioned Brett Pesce's out of Carolina now when we mentioned the additions they made. Brett Pesce ends up in New Jersey on I believe a 6-year deal. And we pull that back up. 6-year, $5.5 million per for Pesce in New Jersey. A lot of people are calling it the Rempe effect, but New Jersey went out and they got some bigger boys. They move out John Marino. They bring in Brett Pesce. Again, they're expecting to have a fully healthy Jonas Siegenthaler and Dougie Hamilton this year, and Luke Hughes. Sorry, not Quinn Hughes. The Devils really are going all in on this. They go and get 2 big goalies as well. I think they realize the Metro is going to be a nasty division to play in when you're going against those top teams, and I think they address their weaknesses perfectly. That combined with a healthy roster next season, I think puts the Devils near the top of this division.
I don't disagree with you at all, because they were already they already had high expectations for themselves this year, and they almost delivered. I think, the team that's plagued by injuries, things like that. but this is a good move. I again, a lot of it's going to depend on guys staying healthy. That's going to be their biggest battle to fight this year. Luke Hughes, I'm very excited to watch. And you said with Siegenthaler too. I just think they have a good core. They really do. Jersey has a great team. It's just a matter of staying healthy and delivering.
Yeah, absolutely. So good move for them. Again, Devils were one of the few teams I thought that really didn't have to do much to get better or avoid getting worse, I should say. But I think they went above and beyond here. And I really like Pesce's game. Honestly, that whole Carolina defensive group was good. As much as I don't think Carolina is worse than they were. It's really hard at the same time to lose Shea and Pesce and not say they are worse. But I think they, again, were another team that addressed their weaknesses correctly. So now we're going to move on to a team that really has just not had a great day or so, depending on who you ask. The Tampa Bay Lightning. First of all, they do go out and they get one of the big fish of free agency. They go out and sign Jake Gensel to a 7-year, $9 million a year deal. Great deal for Gensel. He's a fantastic player, Stanley Cup caliber. He won twice with Pittsburgh. His first 2 seasons in the league, I might add. But clearly a guy that fits the bill for Tampa Bay. It's a guy that knows how to win. It's a guy that's won plenty. Great offensive talent. You could argue his offensive prowess mostly replaces what Stamkos is capable of, but you're paying him more than Stamkos and for longer. Stamkos, again, in Nashville, 4 years, $8 million a year. Gensel, 7 years and $9 million a year. I think Stamkos is the better player. He's also a center.
Yeah.
This is where it gets tough because, again, Stamkos probably the best player in Lightning history other than Marty St. Louis. You could probably argue he's even better than Marty St. Louis. The reality is it really feels like the Bolts dropped the ball here, and Julian Breezeball really shunned the franchise's best player they've ever had.
Yeah, and I mean, Stamkos is upset about it. He talked about it, and he did make it clear that he's very excited to see what Nashville has in store for him. But he wanted to stay.
He'll fit in just fine there.
Oh yeah, dude. No, I'm not worried about him in Nashville at all. I think that's a great fit, and if you're a Nashville fan, you should be worshiping the hockey gods right now because that's going to be huge. But as far as Tampa's concerned, they dropped the ball. They screwed him, and I think they screwed their organization in a sense. And then for them to turn around and kind of, I don't want to say slap him in the face, but then they give Victor Hedman this extension, and
it's the same money. It's the same term and money Stamkos got. It's the same exact contract.
Exactly.
And I know, listen, Hedman's a fantastic player. Hedman deserves, I want to be very clear, Hedman deserves every penny of that contract. He's one of the best defensemen in the league still, but it's the fact that it's the same money that Stamkos got, and it's like, why the fuck couldn't you pay this? You're still in your winning window. Why wouldn't you want to keep your captain? I think it was a terrible move. PR wise and just personally, I just think it was a mess.
Yeah, and Stamkos very obviously felt disrespected by it, which I totally understand. And like you said, not to take away from Victor Hedman, is one of the best defensemen in the league, and that's exactly because I saw people bitching about it online today that why Hedman instead of Stamkos. I don't know why instead of Stamkos, but I'll tell you right now, because I saw people bitching about the age. Well, there's an age difference. No, there's really not. Victor Hedman is 2 years younger than Steven Stamkos.
Thought he was 1 year younger.
No, he's 30. Well, he might actually be 1 year younger, but I know for a fact he's 33 right now. So he might be about to turn 34. But regardless, that's irrelevant. Also, they play 2 different positions too. So there's things to factor in there. You want to keep your top line defenseman right there. Victor Hedman is just unreal. So he deserves that contract, but for them to turn down Stamkos and then turn around and then give Hedman the same exact contract that oh my God, I almost just said Corey Perry, Steven Stamkos just got.
Hey, they kind of look alike, don't they?
I was just gonna say it's because they look alike.
Yeah. Corey Perry, by the way, re-upping with the Oilers. So I saw a meme yesterday. It was an unstoppable force, and it was Corey Perry in the finals, losing in the final versus an immovable object, which is Jeff Skinner and missing the playoffs every year.
Dude, real quick, I just want to say too to any, I know we have at least one Oilers fan listening because he wrote the show that one time. But if you're an Oilers fan, dude, don't even be mad. I will not be surprised to see Edmonton run it back again next year.
I would also like to see now that Stamkos is in Nashville, I would love to see a Nashville Tampa Bay final. That would be hilarious.
Oh, dude, that would be incredible. But I don't want to give Tampa fans the luxury of saying they made it to the final without Stamkos. So
that's fair. That's true. Maybe a heart-crushing loss to the Panthers in round 1 again.
Hey, I'm cool with that.
All right. Speaking of heart-crushing losses, the Toronto Maple Leafs lock up both of their goalies. They extend goalie Joseph Woll 3 years, $3.66 million per year. Good deal for him. I know he's had injury problems, but he looked fantastic in the playoffs. And had it not been for his injury in Game 6, there's a good chance the Leafs win that series. So good move for them to keep Woll at a cheap deal. It's a low risk for both parties. Woll gets, almost $10 million guaranteed to himself by the end of this contract. And the Leafs get their starting goalie who has shown he can do this without having to spend too much money in case he ends up being too injury prone. They also go out and get Anthony Stolarz, who of course played with the Panthers, 2 years, $2 million per year for him. He was one of the, I think in terms of save percentage, he was one of the top 10 goalies in the league this year.
All season.
Now, very different team, the Leafs and the Panthers, but again, a goalie with experience who's played on a winner. He's I think he'll be a perfect guiding voice and a guiding eye for a young goalie like Joseph Woll, who's still really kind of getting his footing. So I definitely like the moves there for the Leafs. So as much as we dunk on them for everything else, they don't have Ilya Samsonov anymore, who now is on the Vegas Golden Knights, which that's a whole nother mess. And we'll maybe talk about that at some other point. But the big thing the Leafs did that made no sense was signing 34-year-old Chris Tanev to a 6-year, $4.5 million per year contract. I have no clue what they were thinking with that. I assume the intention is after the year 3 or 4 to put him on long-term injury reserve and just have him basically retire but still get paid. I assume that's the move, but what a stupid contract.
I remember when you texted me yesterday. Oh, let me see if I can find this text, man. Brian was hot with this.
Yeah, I was like, dude, are they fucking joking? And again, I know the intention is probably to put him on LTIR, but to basically loudly announce that to the world is just obscene.
It wasn't the text you sent me that where you said it was your show notes for this episode.
Yeah. So for those of you that are wondering what the hell he's giggling about, I sent Andrew a screenshot of my show notes yesterday, and all I had on here, let me pull it up because I still have it on here. I have the contract term, but next to it, I just put in all caps, Tanev 6-year deal with an exclamation point and a bunch of skull emojis.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
man,
Tanev till the end of time.
I guess, man, dude, what a disaster. And I mean, it's so stupid because they went out and made what I thought were smart moves and extending Joseph Woll and then getting Anthony Stolarz, who, like you mentioned, was great this year, spent the whole season in the top 10 for save percentage in the NHL, which is great, especially as a backup too. To Sergei Bobrovsky. He was great. I think he's going to be it's hard for me to speak well about Toronto because I cannot stand the Maple Leafs, but I think, like you mentioned too, without Woll's injury, I think that they ultimately would have won that series against the Bruins. I was low-key expecting them to win that series anyway. So I was pleasantly surprised when Boston
underestimated Samsonov.
I sure did. But I think those two signings were good. And like you said, Stolarz played well with Florida. He's on a team that won now, so he's perfect to come into that organization. And then they turn around and they sign Chris Tanev, which I'm not mad that they signed Chris Tanev. I'm just confused as to the numbers. It doesn't make any sense.
And they did kind of make up a little bit for it. They did go out later in the day and pick up Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who again just won the Stanley Cup. Really good defender. I thought had a pretty good offensive year for a guy that was coming off of being bought out. He looked really good during the regular season. He looked really good in the playoffs and in the final. So I do think that was a good signing. It's just the Tanev signing's a mess, but we digress.
No, we do digress. And you know what? I guess I hope it works for them. I don't know what the hell they're expecting to get out of that, but I guess we'll find out. Maybe you and I are going to look stupid by the end of this coming season.
We won't.
Who
It's
knows?
the Leafs.
Yeah, I know. But
all right. So speaking of adding some championship caliber quality players, that's a mouthful. The Seattle Kraken adding Chandler Stevenson and Brandon Montour. Montour comes in on a 7-year, $7.14 million per year deal, and Stevenson comes in at 7 years, $6.25 million per year. Listen, both guys were parts of the last 2 Cup winners. Stevenson with Vegas a couple of years ago, and Montour last week with the Panthers. So Yeah, really good players. Montour is a good defender. I thought maybe the pay was a hair high, but again, free agent market, you can kind of command more money. And for Stevenson, a good center. So I think that helps the Kraken really kind of address some of their depth issues down the middle. I know they want a lot more out of Matty Beniers this season. And there's some tweaks that they still have to make yet, but this is definitely a step in the right direction, especially with a team that's bringing in a new head coach with Dan Bilesma and has a goalie, Joey Decord, who has really seemed to find his ground in the NHL.
Yeah, you literally just took the words right. I was about to bring up the new head and Joey Decord, so I was just like, but it's rough for me now that team finally won a cup, and now you're seeing all these guys leave, and they're good guys like Brandon Montour. Now, and I did remember we were talking yesterday. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go West Coast, if not West Coast, Western Conference for sure. And he ended up going to Seattle. So I think he'll be a great fit there. Like you said, he's a great defenseman, great offensive defenseman for that matter. He was a blast to watch in Florida. I absolutely loved watching him. Stevenson's going to be a great fit too. I think those are two good signings on a team that still has some adjustments they need to make, but overall they're definitely moving in the right direction right now. And I think the biggest thing is a new head coach. I think they're going to have a good season this year.
All righty. Let's talk about the last two major contracts with some teams here before we get into some of the lesser important deals. The Boston Bruins and Canucks pretty much swap players in a sense. The Bruins signed defenseman Nikita Zadorov to a 6-year, $5 million a year contract, and center Elias Lindholm to a 7-year, $7.75 million per year deal. The Bruins go out. They finally address the center depth. They had been rumored for months to be in on Lindholm. They go out. They get him. He can jump in right on either the top line or the second line, and that'll push down one of Zacha or Coyle, or both of them if he's on the top line. And for the defense, they lose Grzelcyk, who had a bad season anyways. They bring in Zadorov, who's a big physical guy. He's your stereotypical Boston Bruins defenseman, just a really defensively stout guy that can absolutely throw some bombs. So good moves for the Bruins. I think Don Sweeney did a good job handling what was a catastrophic ending to the season.
Yeah, and you factor in now that Jake DeBrusk is gone too,
and Linus Ullmark, and we'll get to DeBrusk in a minute because he was one of the guys that went to Vancouver.
Yeah, but I'm very happy as a Bruins fan with these signings, especially Lindholm. I'm over the moon, and especially on defense, like you mentioned, Grzelcyk had he had a shit year. It was very much not a Matt Grzelcyk season at all, at least not what we're used to seeing from him. So I think it's just time for a change of scenery, both for those guys that left and just for the Bruins as a whole. I think there's some things that need to be moved around, and I think this is a great start for Zadorov. I don't know why I was tripping over that. I'm really excited to see him come in, and I really love his comment about "Don't call me Big Z." I think that's a pretty cool nod to Chara. So I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I'm really excited to see how DeBrusk does in Vancouver.
Well, let's get to him. So Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen, both from the Bruins, now in Vancouver. Heinen signing a 2-year, $2.25 million a year deal with the Canucks. Great depth forward. I think he's looked good in pretty much every organization he's played in. He's not a superstar by any means, but he's a great depth guy that in a pinch can play a game or two on the top lines and not be a hindrance. DeBrusk, of course, has a little more star power to his name. It's a 7-year, $5.5 million a year deal. DeBrusk kind of had a backhanded comment about the Bruins organization when he did his interview for the Canucks. Essentially for DeBrusk, there was always kind of a bad romance the entire time he was there. Both his coaches he had to start his career there, Julian and Bruce Cassidy, weren't really fans of his game. And Cassidy and him famously did not get along. And now he comes in under Jim Montgomery. It just never seemed to quite gel. DeBrusk is a pretty good player, and I think this is a good dollar amount for him, especially with the cap going up. But the Canucks, again, they go out, they add scoring, and they add more depth, which for a team that's already a good playoff contender and needs to start plugging in these pieces, I think both of these signings were great.
I agree with you. And as far as Jake DeBrusk goes, I want to point out that I'm not trying to knock him when I say this, because as a Bruins fan, I loved him. I've always loved him. I even told you throughout the years that he plays with so much heart. He's such a committed player, and he leaves everything on the ice. That being said, as far as him not getting along with Bruce Cassidy and, you know, Claude Julien put a bad taste in a lot of different players' mouths too. Giggity. And I think in Vancouver, if he does well in Vancouver, then we'll know it was a Bruins thing. But if he's running into the same issues in Vancouver, then I'm going to go out and say it's a Jake DeBrusk thing. So I think this is really going to show where the true issues were lying.
All right. Yep. I think you're pretty much right on with that. So that's my biggest thing I'm waiting to see, but time will tell. Let's see. One last one here before we kind of run through a few contracts quick. The last big one, 4 years, $6 million a year for Sean Durzi with the Utah Hockey Club. He also joins John Marino and Mikhail Sergachev as new members of Utah. So Ryan Smith said pretty much from the beginning of this team that they want to win. They want to win fast. They're going to do what they can. They had a ton of cap space, had a ton of draft picks. They leveraged a lot of that, and it landed them really good players. They landed 3 extremely talented defensemen, Sergachev and Durzi more so than John Marino. But again, 3 stout defensemen to bolster a lineup that's got a pretty good goaltender. I could really see well, I guess they don't have a name. I could really see Utah being a really tough team to play against this coming season. But I like the moves they made, and I didn't want to really address their picks or their trades that they made, but I think in conjunction with this signing, it was better to just knock all these down for Utah at once.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into the Utah thing. It's still too new for me, so I don't want to start speculating on anything, but I think it's safe to say that they're going to be decent this year. I'll tell you what, it's going to be a lot better than it was in Arizona. I can promise you that.
Well, the way the Coyotes started the season last year felt like there was something there. It was just missing a few pieces. Well, I mean, moving to another state might help too, but yeah, they filled in a lot of their biggest issues were on defense. They have a lot of talented young offensive players that I assume will only blossom further, but I know they moved out Connor Geekie and JJ Moser as well. But again, they bring in 3 really good defensemen and 2, I would say, elite defensemen. And so this team goes from irrelevant and can't sell out a 5,000 seat arena to a pretty legitimate threat to make the playoffs, I feel like.
I think, well, I can tell you this right now. I guarantee Utah's going to sell out every game this year. Now, that's largely in part due to the fact that it's their inaugural season, too. So, I mean, that team could probably...
That and they only have 20,000 or 12,000 unobstructed seats.
Yeah, so, I mean, they could absolutely be terrible this year, and they'll still sell out. But, again, that's because it's their first season. But I don't think that's going to be... I think they're still going to be good this year.
Yeah. All right, we'll run down the gauntlet here. There's just a couple more that I felt had or I don't want to say extreme significance, that had a high level of significance, but weren't enough where I'm like, I was like, who gives a shit really? Ultimately, Patrick Kane extending in Detroit another year, $4 million. Detroit had a really good season that fell apart on them in the last 4 weeks of the season. I suspect that they're going to probably be right on the bubble again this year, but we'll see where they go. But that's a good look for Kane. I think he liked that. I think he just likes that group, and staying around for one more year to try and get back in the playoffs is good on him. And truthfully, it's a 1-year deal. So if shit really hits the fan and they feel the need to trade him, they can.
Yep.
And so that's good signing there. But just one I figured we should mention. Kane's one of the best American players ever. Let's see, 5 years, $5.75 million for Yegor Sharangovich in Calgary. He had a really good season coming there after leaving the Devils. I would definitely say that trade favored Calgary. And again, comes in, scores over 30 goals, looks really good, looks comfortable. A lot hasn't gone right for the Flames the last few seasons, but he has been one of their sole bright spots. So I think a good extension like that for a player like Sharangovich will do them some good. Let's see.
Sorry, something just fell, and I don't know what it was.
No. Oh, boy.
All right.
Let's see here. Jonathan Drouin gets another year extended in Colorado, $2.5 million. Again, that's the Avalanche really doing solid. It's for Nathan McKinnon. Drouin had a great season with the chance the Avalanche gave him last year. I think, again, another low-risk contract that's still going to pay him a couple $1 million. That's good for the player and the team because, again, the upside of Drouin is when he's going, he's got a really good shot. He's got really good hands. So when he's going and he's buzzing with McKinnon, that deal is going to look great.
Yep.
Final one here, and I'm only putting this one in because we are partial to the Jackets. Sean Monahan signing 5 years, $5.5 million per year with the Blue Jackets. Gets reunited with Johnny Hockey, so that top line will probably be Monahan, Gaudreau, and Marchenko. The second line will probably have, I don't know, Boone Jenner on it, Adam Fantilli, and probably Kent Johnson. So a pretty solid addition to the top six for the Jackets, who also, moving on, drafted Caden Lindstrom 4th overall. All the prospect reports of Caden Lindstrom is that he's going to be a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams for hopefully the next 10, 15 years for the Jackets. He's 6'5". He's a great centerman. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch develop. It felt like a really the best player the Jackets could take. I know they had some issues with scoring, and I know they aren't the most defensively sound team, but puck possession is very key when it comes to defense as well. I mean, a best defense is a good offense. You want a guy that can help you get the puck more, a guy that's a big body. He's going to be hard to knock off the puck. He can throw big hits. So for a team that's still well into their building process of their rebuild, I think the Jackets had a pretty good week or so between the draft and free agency.
Yeah, I'm excited for Jackets hockey this season. And I mean, it's easy for me. I live in the area, so not in Columbus, but I'm in Ohio. So I'm looking forward to watching the games this year. And again, with Monahan being reunited with Johnny Gaudreau, I'm really excited to see that. Probably gonna be a little bit of nostalgia there for hockey, especially if you're a Calgary fan. You're probably not happy about it, but I'm very excited to see what the Jackets are going to look like going forward. Now they had a terrible year last year. We got a new GM in there now. They're looking for
who the coach is too.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm really excited to see who the coach is. I think now is when everything starts to trend back upwards for Columbus. So we'll see what happens. I don't want to.
Don Waddell's hungry to get this team good because I think he wants to prove that he can build a champion. And I know he got close in Carolina a couple times, but I think he's really sees that he has a good prospect pool here. I think he knows he just needs to add some talent. Also, the Jackets buy out Adam Boquist. It's going to save him $2.66666666 million on the cap. So he is no longer with the franchise. He cleared waivers and they bought him out. I think the buyout was official today. So he's gone. I know they're still working on the Patrick Laine trade. It sounds like they might be trying to work on a deal with the Minnesota Wild to get Laine a fresh start. We'll see if that goes anywhere. But again, for the Jackets, that deal could bring in some veteran talent the other way. The Wild famously have a lot of bad contracts on their team, but have some pretty good veteran forwards that could help a young group. Like you think of Freddie Gaudreau, Marcus Johansson. I don't want to say Marcus Foligno because I don't think he would waive his no move to come to Columbus, but there's plenty of contracts on the Wild that they could shed in exchange for taking on Laine's deal. So we'll see what happens, but the Jackets, again, are really trending in the right direction. I'm not saying they won free agency, far from it, but they've had a really good week here, and I think they're going to continue trying to piece this together throughout the summer.
I gotta say, one thing that threw me off is the whole Alex Nylander situation.
Yeah, I don't understand not bringing him back again. And you and I
Yeah.
talked about this on the phone. And again, not an elite player by any means, but he comes in, scores more than anybody on the team for the entirety of March and April.
Yeah.
And so he looked really great with them. Again, I think Nylander probably wants a top 6 opportunity somewhere. I get it. I think he's more of a top 9 guy, but I think he wants top 6 minutes. And with the Jackets, I just don't think that was ever going to be feasible, especially if they knew they were bringing in Monahan. It was never going to be there. They have too much young talent to be giving Alex Nylander all that top line time. Sure, you can put him on the power play, but that's not a guy that should be taking minutes away from a player like Johnny Gaudreau or Kent Johnson, or even Boone Jenner or Kirill Marchenko, or the Russians on the third line, Chinikov and Voronkov. You have to get your guys that have developed well the time they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it was
sucks.
just a little, yeah, it sucks. It was a little off-putting at first, but that's hockey, baby.
Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely a bummer though. I was kind of sad to see they didn't at least qualify him as an RFA to see if they can bring him back cheap, but nonetheless, we move on. Andrew, this would be a good time to mention our sponsors and mention the Warrior for Life Fund. So why don't you go ahead and take it away, and I'll jump into your Xenopucks thing in just a bit here because I got a little story about them.
All right. So as always, Fresh Ice is brought to you by our good friends over at Xenopucks. They make a off-ice practice puck designed to be used on virtually any off-ice surface, whether you want to use the flooring in your house. It really doesn't matter the material. You want to take it outside in the driveway where you're on concrete or asphalt. The slide and glide on this is phenomenal. It's like a real puck on ice, and it's also the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck. They make great stuff over there. So if you're looking for a different off-ice alternative, Green Biscuit's just not cutting it for you. You're out there practicing with the rubber ball, whatever it may be, just stop looking, because this is it right here. This is top of the line quality. So head over to xenopucks.com right now. Get yourself a puck. Check out their merchandise selection, and be sure to check them out on Instagram at Xenopucks, XENOPUCKS, and make sure you let them know that Brian and Andy sent you.
Yep. And with Xenopucks, I don't have mine anymore. So you and I have a cousin whose son is a young hockey player. And so my wife and I went over to their house last week. Sorry. We dropped off the Xenopuck to him. He played around with it in the garage for about 10 minutes and absolutely loved it. He was blown away by how much it could slide on the concrete and stuff. And it was an absolute joy watching him just have fun ripping the puck through the garage and slamming it off the goalpost and seeing how much damage it could do. So it was cool though. He definitely liked it, and it was fun seeing somebody other than myself use this thing, because I have hands of cement. So yeah. I can't stick handle or shoot for shit, but it was fun watching a youngster who's an aspiring hockey player really let that thing fly. And so it's cool to see the product works. And if you, like Andrew says, stop looking around for off-ice alternatives, because Xenopucks, they make them better than anybody else.
Exactly. And I just want to point out that through our partnership with them, that they've actually just become friends of the show as well. And they're good to us, and we try to be good to them. I would not sit here every single week and tell you how great this product was if I didn't truly 100% believe that. One thing that you can always bet on, Brian and I will not put our name on anything that we don't believe in. I'm telling
mostly because we're lazy.
That too. But these guys, this is top of the line right here. Stop looking. Make sure you get yourself one of these if you're looking for a different way to train off ice.
Hopefully we can get the Xenopucks guys on this summer. And we'll talk about this at the end, but we're going to be taking basically a little bit of a break after this coming weekend.
Our off season.
We'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit, but hopefully this summer we can still get in a little interview with those guys and have them on the show. So I want to mention our other partners as well. The hockey wraparound, they're offering ways to make your life easier outside of the rink. You can dry your stinky equipment off at home with their equipment drying racks. Get yourself some new tape on the website, and of course, check out their merch selection and get their premier product, the Blade Protector. It's just a vinyl wraparound that goes on the blade of your hockey stick. Taping it expensive over time. Hockey sticks are expensive. Don't hack them up in the driveway or on the basement floor or on the shooting pad. Just get yourself a Blade Protector, and you're going to protect your investment. Visit hockeywraparound.com/Fresh Ice and use the code FreshIcePod at checkout. You get 15% off your order. So definitely a great deal there. And again, it's going to pay for itself when you're not buying a new hockey stick and having to burn through tape like crazy.
Yeah, it sure as hell is a lot easier to pay $20 for a wraparound than it is $300 for a new stick. So bear that in mind.
All right, let's move on here. A couple of noteworthy trades. There was a lot of trades at the draft, but quite a few of them were pick swaps or minor league players moving around. One of the big ones I saw was Kevin Hayes going to the Pittsburgh Penguins from the St. Louis Blues in exchange for a second-round pick in the next draft. The second-round pick in the next draft and Kevin Hayes going to Pittsburgh in exchange for future consideration. So the Blues get nothing back as of right now for this deal, but for Hayes, another chance to kind of make a name for himself. He had a lot of good years with the Rangers and with the Flyers. Didn't have the best ending with the Flyers, but it really, I don't know. I never noticed Kevin Hayes on the ice when the Wild or the Jackets were playing the Blues. So good chance for him to get a start. And honestly, with Gensel out of Pittsburgh, who knows? He might be slotting in on the first line with Crosby. So yeah, he's definitely a good enough player where when he's on, he's a first line quality player. So and Sid has famously played with made guys who are third liners on any other team a first liner, like a Connor Sherry, Brian Rust. So the possibilities are endless there. I think this is a low risk move for the Penguins, and a good chance for, again, Kevin Hayes to, go take a run at a championship. Who knows? I mean, if the Penguins have a great roster, if they can just not have a nightmare power play like they did last year, I think they might be onto something. So now we'll look at the LA Kings, who sent the 118th pick during this draft last week and the second round pick in the next draft. They send that to Tampa Bay in exchange for Tanner Jeannot. Tampa, this one really looks bad on them, and from every angle. They lose Jeannot for practically nothing after giving up the moon and the stars to get him. I know they were in an area where they were trying to extend their championship window, and based on the tenure that Tanner Jeannot had with the Predators, it looked like it was a slam dunk to bring in a guy with a physical brand of hockey like he has, but it has not worked out at all, and now they're going to lose him for almost nothing.
Yeah, that's a tough look. And I mean, again, not to bash on Tampa, but I mean, Tampa pretty much has been a tough look the entirety of the last
since they've been eliminated from the playoffs. It's not been great
you can say it, but I mean, especially since free agency started yesterday, it's just been bad. So, and I mean, I have friends who are Tampa fans, to which I say, haha. But yeah, I mean, that sucks. If you're a Tampa fan, it's kind of, you're just watching your organization kind of slowly start to crumble away.
All right. So the Vegas Golden Knights, we're going to talk about the Washington Capitals now. Vegas Golden Knights send goalie Logan Thompson to Washington for third round pick in last week's draft and a third round pick in next year's draft. And so Washington goes out, they get another, it's very strange. They have two right-handed catching goalies between Charlie Lindgren and now Logan Thompson, but yeah, it's very weird to see that. But again, Logan Thompson, really good goalie, had a great tenure with the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm kind of surprised they traded him, but it's obviously going forward, their guy is going to be Hill, it seems. So for the Capitals, you now get I would say a really solid goaltending tandem. You can really run a 1A, 1B system with those guys and the quality they bring.
Yeah, I think sorry, there's a cat right here.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's a good look. I mean, Adin Hill still, I have very mixed emotions about Adin Hill. Because when he's on, look out. But I don't know. I feel like Vegas could just be doing better goaltending wise. I don't dislike this move, but I feel like Vegas could be doing so much better goaltending wise.
So Washington, now we're moving on. They get Jacob Chychrun in a trade in exchange for a 2026 third round pick and defenseman Nick Jensen. So Ottawa gets some defensive depth. Chychrun wanted out of town anyway, so Ottawa doesn't lose him for completely nothing. And Washington gets a really solid defender who, when he's on his game, is very effective. And so Washington, look, it's kind of been messy between the Backstrom injury and trading Kuznetsov out. It's kind of been a mess for them, but they go out now, they get a really good defenseman, they go out and they get a really good goalie. And if Pierre-Luc Dubois can be 60% of himself, I think they've come out of this offseason looking pretty good, and I think they could do some damage next year. But they need to keep adding. This can't be all they do, otherwise they're just going to be spinning their tires.
Yeah, I don't. God damn it. I think, like we mentioned it last week, I believe, with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, right now it just looks like they're trying to find someone to feed passes to Ovi to chase that record, which is fine, but that can't be your long-term goal either. You still need to plan ahead for the future.
Correct.
Obviously, everybody wants to see Ovi break the record. And I think if you don't, you're out of your mind, and you should probably stop watching hockey. But you got to plan ahead for the future. You can't just make one move and call it a day and say a prayer. So we'll see what else they do. It's a long off season, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird seeing the Caps not be good. The entire time I've been a hockey fan, they've always been a good team, and then watch them fall off the last few years has been weird. Yeah. All right. Vegas sends Paul Cotter and a 2025 third round pick to the New Jersey Devils. In return, they get Alex Holtz and Akira Schmid. I believe they did not end up signing Schmid, so interesting choice there. But New Jersey picks up a good forward in Paul Cotter, who's probably a guy that can play anywhere. Your second, third, or fourth line's really not a top line quality player, but he's only 24. He'll turn 25 early this coming season, but an effective young player, and again, a Stanley Cup champion. So nothing wrong with bringing that kind of caliber of player into an organization that's desperately trying to get back on the map and, be a bona fide winner.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's all about experience, man, and that's exactly what you want. So good on them. We'll keep an eye on it.
For this one now, as the Wild kind of try and come up with some kind of identity, they swap Vinny Lettieri to the Bruins for Jakub Lauko, and they also swapped 4th-round picks in this draft. So the Bruins get Vinny Lettieri, who's spent years with the Wild organization, kind of spinning his tires and really hasn't developed into much. Maybe a fresh start for him. Hopefully he does well. I did like him as a player, just never more than a 4th-line guy, 10 minutes a night at the most, if that. But for the Wild, they bring in Lauko in this trade. They also sign Yakov Trenin. They're trying to develop more of a physical brand of hockey. And again, I think Michael Russo talked about it on Worst Seats in the House. They want to run a line with like Hartman, Trenin, and Marcus Foligno. And if that line's healthy, that line could be a real physical, nasty line. And the Wild need some kind of identity to their game, because on the nights they're not shooting the lights out, they look like a mess. So I think between that and the Trenin signing, I think the Wild did a good job establishing a little more character in the lineup. But again, that's another team that's still got such a long way to go and so many questions to answer. But I guess some progress is better than no progress.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody knows it better than you right now, with you being a Wild fan. I mean, that's a team that's just getting murdered by horrible contracts, and they've got a pretty deep hole to dig themselves out of.
Yeah, I will say they did really well at the draft. I think their first 3 picks were all fantastic players. I think they stole Zeev Buium, and then Aaron Kiviharju and Ryder Ritchie. I think they made some great choices there. But again, they're just prospects. You never know what'll happen.
Right. I mean, I don't want to say it's a crapshoot, but you're definitely just kind of taking a gamble and hoping it goes in your favor. But I still think it's a small step in the right direction for a team that is pretty much just grabbing at anything. I don't want to say they're grabbing at anything they can, but they're being cautiously optimistic, we'll say.
Yeah. And again, I think I think they're looking for Liam Ogren to take another step this year. I think they really want to see what they have with Marat Huznadinov. I know they're still waiting on Daniil Yurov to come over from Russia. So there's a lot of guys in the system now, and this team, once they get out of cap hell, could really do some damage, but you got to get out of cap hell. I think Bill Guerin probably would be best to move the Marcus Johansson and Freddie Gaudreau contracts in any way he can. You're married to that Marcus Foligno deal and the Ryan Hartman deal, so you have to accept your fate there. And you're married to the Jared Spurgeon deal if he can't stay healthy, which, I mean, I know he spent most of the season on LTIR, but there's just so much money that got tied up in guys that they shouldn't have it in. So I think they're really counting on these prospects to make a big splash, because if they can, they're all dirt cheap deals. They're all on under $1 million a year because they're so young. So
yeah.
But right now it's really Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek and Rossi and Boldy and their band of merry men. So a lot of work to do for the Wild.
It's all right. Every team has it every once in a while.
Yeah. So we'll see. The only team really that's in more cap hell than the Wild is the Colorado Avalanche right now, which I was debating if we were going to get to this on the show or not, but I'm going to pull up the tweet I saw from Frank Saravalli yesterday that almost made me fall over. And this is going to be a hard one to find because he tweeted 8 million deals yesterday. But let's see. Essentially, Colorado's got 1 goalie signed, 5 defensemen, and 11 forwards, including Gabriel Landeskog and Valeri Nichushkin. So they don't even have a full roster signed right now, and they only have $300K in salary cap space. So they have virtually no money to bring in another player right now. It seems like they still need a goalie, and it seems like the dam has got to break here soon. I would not be surprised to see a big trade from the Avs this offseason as they look to, unfortunately, undo some cap messes they made, which included them losing Sean Walker.
Dude, I think right now, I mean, aside from being up against the cap ceiling, like inches from it, we've said it so many times, and I don't know how many more fucking times I can say, dude,
Get a goalie.
They need to get a fucking goalie this offseason. I don't know. That needs to be priority number one. It should have been priority number one back at the fucking trade deadline. They didn't do it. I don't know what the hell they're waiting for. I mean,
well, and now it was priority number one to get a goalie, but now priority number one is sign an NHL roster. I mean, again, right now they have 10 forwards signed now and 7 defensemen. So they do have 2 goalies. They have Georgiev and Justus Annunen, but
you tell me that's the goalie tandem that's going to win him a cup?
No, not, and that's the problem. And you look on defense. So they have their big 4, Makar, Taves, Girard, and Manson. Okay, behind that, you have Jacob McDonald, who's 1,000 years old, Calvin DeHaan, who's 1,000 years old, and both making like league min, and then Eric Brandstrom, who they just signed for $900,000. The top 4 is lethal, and we know it. It won them a cup, but that's a mess. And again, they only have 10 forwards, so they don't even have enough to ice 4 lines right now. And again, they're showing $3.8 million projected in cap space right now. But like I said, the tweet I saw from Sarah Volley says they actually have about 300,000. So, and even if they do have 3 million, they still have to go out and sign at least 2 more guys for less than that. Plus, you probably want another guy to fill in some depth, unless you're just planning on calling up guys when there's injuries. And again, if Landeskog, and O'Connor's the other player I was thinking of as well. If Landeskog comes back from injury, that's $7 million. So it shows they have $3.8 million in space right now. If Landeskog comes back from injury, you're all of a sudden $4 million over the cap, and you're either moving somebody out or you're taking a huge overage penalty into the following season.
Well, that's my thing. I mean, as much as you want Landeskog to come back, as far as finances are concerned right now, you better hope he doesn't.
I think mentally for the team, I think they want him to come back. I think you'd rather have him back and be forced to make a tough choice than play another season where you're paying a guy $7 million to sit on the sideline. But the Avalanche got a lot of moves to make. They're in such a weird spot because their cap is in hell right now. But on the ice, they're one of the best teams. They're really hard to play against. So I'll be interested to see how they handle it. Again, I am happy for them that they extended Casey Middlestad. That's a really good player on a really, what I think is a cheap deal. And Mikko Rantanen, again, after next season is a UFA, and he's already making $9 million and is probably going to command a raise of some sort. And so for the Avs, you really got to dance around this carefully. Otherwise, you're either going to lose a big player or you're going to fall into mediocrity because you had to trade away so many good, smaller players, and now you're forced to bring in garbage.
Yeah, God, man. I just don't know how much more I can talk about the Colorado Avalanche, man.
Yeah, I know you're tired, but they keep fucking up, so you got to keep talking about it.
Yeah,
but we'll see. Again, they're very good. If they can find ways to shake one of these big contracts and bring in some smaller depth contracts, that might have to be what they do to get by. But again, they're paying Nathan McKinnon $12.5 million. Rantanen's getting $9.25 right now, and after this season, if he stays there, I mean, he's going to be getting probably north of 10. I don't see why he would take a pay cut. He's one of the best players in the league.
Yep. Yeah, he ain't taking no pay cut.
So especially with a guy that's already won a championship too, now go get your money.
Yeah.
Or the other side of it could be true though. I mean, Sam Reinhart just won the Stanley Cup last week and took a really, really team friendly deal to stay there. So different situations, of course, but
yeah, still,
it's just I'll be interested to see where the Avalanche go. It is one we're gonna have to watch with a pretty high level of intrigue here because there's just so much going on with this team. It's a mess.
I just hope we can come back next season and say, hey, Colorado got a goalie. I don't have to fucking shit on them for the next 6 weeks.
They probably won't.
Yeah.
Listen, before we go, a couple things, but first I want you to have a chance to talk about Warrior for Life.
Thank you. Real quick, I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, but you've heard me mention it on the last few episodes, and it started when we had Bob Pizzini and Mark Mowers and Andrew Alberts on the show. The Warrior for Life Fund. They are a charity that helps military service members and their families transition, whether it be coming back from a deployment or transitioning back into civilian life after getting out of the military. And I can speak to that because I myself am a veteran, and transitioning back from a deployment or back into the civilian world is one of the hardest challenges you can face. And it's just not something that you can fully grasp or understand unless you've been there. The Warrior for Life tries to ease that process, and they do it through the game of hockey, whether it be getting guys out on the ice just for an hour. It's to relieve the mental stress. They do things for the vet service members' families. They do adaptive sports like sled hockey, which if you've never watched sled hockey, it's incredible to watch. And I highly recommend it. You can find new videos of it on YouTube. It takes some serious talent. But they do that. They partnered with the Boston Bruins alumni organization, and they just recently partnered with the NHL. They do charity games where the Warrior for Life Fund team of hockey players will play against the Boston Bruins alumni team. It's just really cool stuff that they do to help veterans transition back into the civilian life and kind of ease that mental burden on them and their families. It's not something that's cheap to do, and so they do function off of donations. So if you're able to do so and you're interested in helping, you can head over to warriorforlifefund.org right now and make a donation today.
All right. Well, I love that. Just like always. So yeah, definitely please go over and make a donation because any dollar helps. And we got some breaking news real quick. Elliot Friedman just tweeting that he hears Ottawa and Shane Pinto have solved their stalemate. Sounds like a 2-year, $3.5 million plus per year deal. He says he's not exactly sure of the number. Sounds like quite a bit for Shane Pinto, but again, breaking the stalemate there and finally getting a deal done. Seemed like a trade was going to be that.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
So. They get the deal done. They keep Pinto, who has a relatively high ceiling. So we'll see how that pans out there, but definitely one I wanted to catch since it broke while we were recording. Let's see here. One more thing. So before we go, a couple things that I want to talk about. The first one is we're finally going to lose Cap Friendly. I believe Friday will be the last day that you can publicly access Cap Friendly. And so we will lose the website that 99.9% of people use to track hockey contracts, and even NHL teams use it as their resource because the league does not make this stuff publicly available. It's all done through collaboration, and the guys that run the website did all of this on their own. So kind of crazy how they keep track of all of this. But again, the Washington Capitals bought the website and are shutting it down Friday, July 5th. So we'll no longer be able to use this resource. There is still Puckpedia out there, which is used to track contracts, but who knows how long it'll be before that gets bought. So thanks to the guys at Cap Friendly for providing us really useful stuff as hockey fans for tracking these contracts and these signings. The last, 7-8 years or so, they really blew up after Vegas bought General Fanager. So really the last 7-8 years have been really run by Cap Friendly. So thanks to the guys over there, and congratulations on hitting it big on the payday with the Capitals. Wish the best for you. It just sucks we're losing your product. And to the guys at Puckpedia, hopefully you're ready to invest some dough because it sounds like everybody's jumping over to Puckpedia to track contracts.
Yeah, buckle up.
So we'll see what happens. But yeah, definitely going to miss using Cap Friendly. It was a super easy website to use and to follow. So yeah. Now a couple things to talk, or one more thing to talk about here is about us. So we're going to record a show this Sunday. That'll be the 7th of July. And then after that, we're going to take some sort of a break for probably a couple months. So what we have planned is we're going to record a show Sunday. It'll be our season finale episode. Throughout the remainder of the summer, we're going to try and get in video content and podcast content to address all 4 divisions and what each team needs to do to make their season better next year or to continue the trend they're going with. We were going to do a show just about the teams that have missed the playoffs, but it ultimately will just be easier to do a show where do shows, plural, where we address all 32 teams and what they need to do going forward. So we'll probably record that throughout the summer and get that uploaded into our podcast platforms in some manner. The only actual full-fledged episode that we're going to do this summer will be, first of all, if we can get the guys from Xenopucks on here, we'll definitely interview them and upload it. And the other is that sometime in August, the PWHL is going to announce the real names and logos and jerseys and all that for the PWHL franchises. So we'll probably do some kind of episode for that where we react to that, as that's pretty well been anticipated. So can't wait to do that. But again, that's not going to be till August. So really after Sunday, we're mostly going to be done until the beginning of September. Training camp is usually the second, third week of September. So we're going to take a little bit of time off for ourselves, which not that we take too much time out of our lives to do this, but again,
it's enough though.
It's enough. And yeah, so we're going to spend some time away, but we'll make sure when we get a chance to record stuff so we can upload it so we're not completely out of the loop. If any major breaking news happens, we'll of course react to it and upload it. But we just kind of wanted to give you guys a heads up as we prepare, because we didn't want to just drop it on you Sunday that's going to be the last episode for the season. So kind of give you an idea. So my big thing here, and when this will transition into our closing, is that if you have questions for us, get them in, because Sunday's show is literally going to be any leftover news from free agency, which I will assume is going to be a pretty small amount now that all the big dogs have already signed places. Any leftover news from the rest of this week, and then we're just going to spend time answering questions. So if you're listening, please get those questions in. You can email the show, freshicehockeypodcast@gmail.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave your question in the comments. There's a link on our website, freshicehockeypodcast.com. You can get your questions in there. You can DM us on Instagram @FreshIceHockeyPodcast, or you can DM myself @BrianFreshIce. Message us on Facebook, on YouTube. Get those questions in. We are going to answer every single one we get in the next episode. So please do that. And before I hand it over to Andrew, I just want to thank everybody who's tuned in for this first season, although it's going to be an abridged one because we started towards the back half of it. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in and continues to tune in, and to our close friends and family who have done their best to support our show and promote it as much as they can, and to our partners, Xenopucks, for teaming up with a couple of idiots like us. Thank you to everybody who helps make this show possible. And Andrew, thank you for coming up with the idea to finally really get this thing going. You've put in a lot of your own time into the show, and with how crazy busy my life has been the last few months, yours has been just as busy. And with the job you do, your normal job, I mean, it's a lot to take on all at once. So thank you for all you do to make this show possible, because if it weren't for you kicking me and kicking us in the ass, we would not be sitting here having this conversation right now.
Yeah, man, that's been fun, and there's nobody else I'd rather be doing it with. So it's been a fun first season, and I'm looking to doing next season as a full season. So it should be a lot of fun and a lot more busy. So, but with that being said, we will see you guys Sunday. Make sure you do not miss it.
And get those questions in, please.
Yes, absolutely. Get your questions in. I'm ready to overdose on questions. So fire them away. FreshIceHockeyPodcast@gmail.com and contact@FreshIceHockeyPodcast.com.
And for Christ's sake, comment on YouTube, like the video, and subscribe if you're watching.
Yes, please.
All right, guys. Subscribe. We will see you Sunday.
Take care and comb your hair.